Oh, hello, dear foreigner. I'm sure you're wondering what the picturesque country of Sweden must be like. Well, look no further. Allow me, Vukmir, to be your guide. Left-wing extremists have issued death threats towards a young female Christian Democrat. She says that she was riding her bike home one evening when someone suddenly pushed her from the side, so she fell to the ground and got the bike over her. A young man appeared pointing a knife at her, saying, "If you continue like this, I'm going to slit your throat, bitch." This isn't the first time she's been threatened. A year ago she started getting notes in her school locker saying, "I'm going to kill you, capitalist pig," and "Capitalism and fascism must die." Then they set her locker on fire, so the entire school had to be evacuated. What's interesting about this story is that, first of all, I have never heard of Swedish left-wing extremists attacking Islamists, which we have in Sweden, and they, without a doubt, have more oppressive political views than the Christian Democrats. For example, Hizb ut-Tahrir openly say that they want to abolish equality and democracy. By definition, they are fascist and sexist. And yet, they haven't been touched by the Reds. Second of all, people who are very far to the left usually talk about the importance of feminism and how women are an exposed and vulnerable group in society who need to be protected and elevated in order to reach the same privilege as white men. But when a woman has opinions that the so-called anti-fascist left doesn't like, they just call her a bitch and wave a knife in her face. That's incredibly progressive. It reminds me of that time a girl was assaulted and raped by 3 immigrants. This caused Sweden's Nazis to hold a demonstration against rape. And because of that, the anti-racist left arranged a protest of their own against racism. You'd think that the female victim deserves all the attention here. I mean, they might as well had their own demonstration against rape, but you'd be surprised by how the Swedish left prioritize things. Especially when the father of the girl asked them, well, no, rather he begged them not to have the demonstration, because it felt like a spit in all of the family's faces. But the so-called anti-racists went on with it anyway. So for that day, the victim and her family decided to travel out of town.
In other news,
a member from the Conservative Party, the Moderates, suggested that since we have a shortage of housing in Sweden, immigrant refugees should be able to live in people's garages. His idea is that people should be able to get tax funding for rebuilding their garage into an apartment so that they can lend it out to an immigrant refugee. This is what our parliament looks like here in Sweden. People saying the most insane shit in some kind of contest to outdo each other and win the title of most tolerant immigration fetishist. This reminds me of that time our former prime minister said that there's actually lots of room for immigrants in Sweden, since we have lots of forest. This stupid fuck doesn't even understand how housing works. Like we're all just supposed to take the desperate immigrants and send them out into the woods and create thousands of Middle Eastern wolf families?
in other news,
The Sweden Democrats are getting an increasing amount of support amongst immigrants. For those of you who aren't familiar with this party, they are the so-called racist party in Sweden, who hate immigrants so much that they want to set up concentration camps and kill them all and eat all of the newborn children. At least according to the anti-racist left. So it's pretty interesting that a party who supposedly hate immigrants are more popular amongst immigrants than the left party. Sweden Democrats have 8.5% and the left party have 8.0%. It really makes you wonder what the fuck their definition of racism is. I seriously doubt that 8.5% of immigrants would vote for a party who want to throw them out. Or kill them. On a related note, in certain residential areas where there's lots of immigrants, it is impossible to live openly as a homosexual or transsexual due to harassment and threats of violence. This is according to the association Human in Gothenburg, who work with helping immigrant LGBT individuals. According to a representative for the association, not a single person who comes to them for support lives openly with their sexual orientation. The reason these people sought asylum in Sweden in the first place is because they couldn't live openly as homosexuals in their home country. But when they arrive to Sweden and get set up in the Swedish ghettos, the same kind of religious intolerance exists there. Not very surprisingly, the representative for Human came to the conclusion that the more immigrants who come to Sweden, the harder it becomes for everyone to live openly. Of course, this becomes the case when the mere suggestion of assimilation to secular Swedish values is considered racist. Our politicians and journalists refuse to acknowledge that Swedish culture is more civilized and more developed than other countries. If it wasn't, then why the fuck would these people be seeking asylum here to begin with? You know, I was asked by a viewer if all Scandinavian countries are as insane as Sweden. Well, no. Denmark, Finland and Norway are all taking their medication, and thus aren't as prone to social justice warrior delusions. In fact, one of the reasons that Sweden Democrats are considered racist is because they want the same immigration policy as our neighboring countries. I think that says a lot. A jihadist terrorist is reported to have been killed in Syria. He left behind his wife, a Swedish woman who used to lobby for softer laws on terrorism, and who is today active in the Green Party. Now, I'm sure that she's changed. I mean, if someone who was once deeply involved in the KKK decided to join the Republicans and run for president, you wouldn't think oddly about it. There's no reason to get suspicious. Sweden is like a bad B-movie. You know what the worst part is? This was discovered by a right-wing journalist who works for the biggest conservative newspaper in Sweden. He put it up on his blog along with all the sources. Assumingly because the mainstream media would never address this type of thing, since, well, the majority of the people working at our state-owned, politically neutral media are Green Party members, and it's made pretty obvious by how they do their reports. For instance, recently they did a report on how a library in Hässelby is being terrorized by young immigrants who go there to set fire on papers, flip chairs over, litter all over the floor with chips and Coke bottles, leaving the library looking like shit and generally creating a hostile environment. Library staff tried telling them to behave, repeatedly, but it didn't work. It just continued, and eventually library staff would go on sick leaves. It got so bad that the manager decided to close the library during afternoons. When asked by reporters why they were being assholes, two immigrants complained about how they have nothing to do after school, and how they need some place that offers seats and heating. After the news story, a conservative politician went on Twitter and wrote that it took him 15 seconds to Google and discover that there's actually 16 recreational centers in that same western part of Stockholm, and that one of them is located right next to the library. One might wonder why the journalists at Sweden's radio didn't even bother to bring this up when interviewing the hoodlums. But then again, that recreational center doesn't even open until 6 o'clock, so I suppose I can understand why these fucking assholes can't wait for 2 hours before they decide that it's a good idea to defy evolution and transform into baboons. Never mind the young foreigners who actually go to the library to educate themselves and study, or the families looking to have a good time with their children. Speaking of which, this isn't restricted to Stockholm. Libraries all over the country are having to close early or hire security because of immigrant youth gangs who are shouting obscenities at the staff, talking loudly, making a mess by littering, pouring soda all over the floor, spitting on the walls and sometimes even behaving violently. A complaint from a woman regarding a library in Kista went as following. Shouldn't libraries be quiet? A bunch of kids were running around screaming with the parents not giving a shit. Large groups of men were playing music from their cell phones, another was talking in his, and in the ladies' bathroom a gypsy beggar was washing his underwear in the sink. The same sink that the rest of us are supposed to be using. Is this allowed? Perhaps I should do my laundry in there as well. Fix this! Mass immigration and double standards are a fantastic combo. What's most amazing, however, is that these events have led to an ideological discussion about what libraries are supposed to be. Libraries have always been quiet, but now certain progressives are claiming that they should be lively meeting places, with one leftist poet coining the phrase "the library right" and tweeting, "Monday night I'm gonna be reading poetry with a few others at the Årsta library. Loudly. The library right are already on my case. God damn hippies." On a different note, students at a Swedish school in Ljungby wanted to wave the Swedish flag when they graduate, along with other national flags, in order to demonstrate that they are a multicultural class. And to this they also wanted to sing the national anthem, that is to say, Zlatan's version of it. Now, this is as politically correct as it could possibly get. Here's the kicker though. The principal still forbid them from using any kind of flags or singing the national anthem, with the reasoning that it could be misinterpreted and we don't want to risk anyone getting offended. We have experiences of someone wanting a flag from a specific country and then suddenly some other student who maybe has xenophobic opinions wants to go holding the Swedish flag, and we just don't think that's appropriate. You can't possibly get any more politically correct than this. These students are flat out saying, we are a diverse mix of different nationalities and we like Sweden for allowing us to be that. And yet he still censors them? This actually isn't the first time something like this has happened. In December last year, another school in Halmstad banned the Swedish flag after a student wore the Swedish flag as face paint for a costume contest, along with a toy weapon. So the principal banned the flag from being used in all instances except for when it's a flag day or in case of an international exchange, because he was afraid that it might offend the foreign students. There's several levels of perversity to this. First of all, nobody had complained about the young boy's costume. It was completely harmless and just for fun. So the principal was only being paranoid. I'm going to diagnose him with politically correct psychosis. Second of all, why would any of the foreign students have a problem with the Swedish flag? They're living in Sweden. Sweden took them in so they didn't have to die from a war. What kind of racist assholes would they be if they were to hate Sweden? And even if they were to be offended by the Swedish flag, why would anyone suggest that we should take consideration to their stupid opinions? It's nothing short of amazing that the Swedish flag has become a taboo in Sweden, the mangina capital of the world. That's not gonna be enough.
And that's all, folks.